Hi guys, Dwayne from Dirt Devil RC Motorsports here. I've got another tutorial video for you. The last one that I made, I showed you how you can make your own cheap LED light kit for your RCs. And today I'm going to show you how I make a nice trick underglow for my car. To help it stand out on the track, you know, be separated from the pack. This kit that I'm going to make, the initial outlay for it can be a little bit expensive if you don't shop properly. All of the components that I'm going to use today, I bought off of eBay. Yes, it takes a while for everything to get to you, but the money you're saving is immense. All up to make one of these kits today that I'm going to make is, the initial outlay was about $30. But each of the kits, when you break it all down, works out to about $4 or $5. That's Australian dollars because I'm from Australia. So if you put that, you know, you say $5 or $6, then you go online and you look up the ready-made kits that are out there. They start at about $15. But the downside to those ones is they're all made at a generic size that may not suit your particular style of car. You could be running a Tamiya M chassis car, you could be running a big 8 scale buggy, you could be running a 110 scale crawler, you could be running anything from Traxxas, which, as we all know, is slightly overscale. So those components aren't going to fit 100% right. My kit, you're making it custom to the particular vehicle or particular body that you've chosen. With this one, it's going to be flexible, so if you wanted to, you could attach it to the chassis, and so it's permanently attached to the car, and then you just drop a body on and go. But the way I do it is I attach them to the body. That way I can have different colors under different cars rather than just one color, one generic color for everything. The body I've chosen to do for today is this one. It's a custom painted Ford F-150 Lightning NASCAR truck. My buddy King helped me paint this one up. He gave me a few of the pointers. I ended up making some stencils on the computer and printed them out and stuck them in the car to give me these painted on looks. Just some other stickers that I had laying around. This one's already got headlights and tail lights in the car. I started that the other day. But what I want to show you today is my underglow. Now, at the end of this video, you will notice some other lights will also be in this car. When you do see them, just remember that some of them I will have followed the process from my last video, while others will be using the same kind of process that I'm going to show you today of how I make my underglow, but they're going to be a different purpose. Alrighty guys, what I have here is some 3mm thick fiber optic cable. I went on eBay and I found 10 meters of it for $13 Australian. It took about a month and a half for it to get here, but it's going to make all the difference to what I'm doing here. If you shop around, you could probably find it cheaper, but most of the time you are going to find it more expensive for less quantity. I've seen online places selling it for like $9 and $10 a meter, where, like I said, I got 10 meters of it for $13. So it pays to shop around. Anyway, get your fiber optic Lay it out on the side of your car, like so. Don't go all the way to the end. Don't go over here. You don't need it, because you've got to be able to fit your LED light in. As you can see, I've taped up the inside of the body here to help with the reflecting of the light. And it also strengthens the body. But measure out where you want it to go. Give yourself a little bit of space inside the wheel arches. Get your knife. Cut it off. Alright. Repeat that step all the way around the car. So you've got both sides then and the end. Now that I've got my fibre optic cable cut, I'm going to get started on the lighting. Now the difference between this particular setup and doing my LED lights is you can't run all the positives and all the negatives down opposite sides of the cars. There has to be some crossover, because otherwise you're just going to use so much wire that it's wasteful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a positive wire from the back of the car around here to here and here. But I'm also going to run a positive from here, and it's going to run across this side of the car, down here to this corner and to this corner. Then I can use just the one lead. I can junction in like I did with my other LEDs. I can junction in and just have one cable, one positive cable from each side of the car come to the center section. And then I'm going to do the same with my negatives. But the negatives I'm going to wire the opposite corners. So my negative for the front of my car is going to run down this way to this corner and this corner. Same over here. It's going to run over here to this corner and this corner. So it's a cross pattern. Alright. So grab my cable, got my wire here. Take it to about where you want it. Run it along the back of the car here, around to about there. That's where you want it to stop. Maybe because I've got wires already on the car here, I'll follow this up about there. So I'll follow it up a little bit to about there. Gives me a little bit of leeway for when I take the body on and off. Plus I've got an extension lead that's got to go on the car later on. So cut that off. There's my positive for one part of the car. Then get your wire again, which I've dropped. If you've got offcuts of wire, they always come in handy. I just happen to have a cardboard box here that's just got offcuts of random lengths of wire. I'll go in here and see if I've got, oh, there we go. Because I need a small positive to go from around here to here, just a random offcut will work. Come down to about there. There's my little bit extra just in case. There we go. That's that positive done. Now I'm going to have a positive that's going to the front of the car. So long wire there. I'm going to junction this one in. So I'll come down to about there, like so. There we go. That's all my positive wires. I've just got to cut one more. Cut one more positive wire. And then I'll go through the car and I'll cut all of the negatives the same way. And then we'll get to soldering. Right, before I go too much further, I thought I'd better remind you about when you're cutting your wires to cut the link up wire that goes between the negative on one side and the positive on the other side. You need to do the same thing here with the underglow for this car. But the difference is that the underglow is longer, so you're going to need more wire, because you're going to not only need to go from this LED here to this LED here, but you've also got to allow extra, because your LED is probably going to be in that sort of orientation. You can bend it over a little bit, but they don't bend much with the the heat shrink on them. So you've got to try and put as much lead on there as you think you can get away with. I tend to go with mine, I tend to go up about halfway up the height of the door panel on the car and come back down, follow it along, and do the same thing over here. So you end up with a couple of centimeters extra wire on there that you may need to tape down, but it's also the best way to not put too much pressure on the pins on your LEDs. You don't have to bend them as far and run the risk of them popping off or snapping. So just take that into mind when you're looking at the wire that you're going to be using to do the job. And when you are cutting your wires out, you've got to take that into account as well. All right. So remember, you there, down, bring it around like so, up, over and around. Right. And you just cut it off there like that. So that's the length I want. Go ahead, use it as a template, drag it through, trim off a little piece of wire that I don't need, and there we go. That's the 2 pieces I need for either side of the car. I'll just go through and repeat the process for the front and the rear. Now I've got all my wires cut, got my LEDs all picked out, got my resistor. It's now time to start cleaning everything up, like stripping the ends and start soldering. Just remember though, as you're going through putting your pieces together, it can be easy to get them mixed up. So try and keep them separated on your desk, or just do one side at a time, if you find that easier. But if you forget, maybe, you get them mixed up, just test them on your car once you've got them together. Once you've got all the pieces all joined up, everything ready to go, just test it on the car. And then just put a piece of sticky tape or something on it, write it like a label or something, just say. Right, now I've got all my wires cut, got my LEDs chosen, my resistor, got my wire strippers here, got my solder and everything ready to go. It's time to start putting everything together. So I'm going to go through now the same process that I did with the light kit the other day. And I'll just do one for you here, and then I'll go ahead and do all of the others. And then I'll come back and show you how to run the cable for the underglow that links the positive on one to the negative of the other. Alright, so positive cable. Remember, the longest prong is always your positive on your LED. This is a 150 ohm resistor. Line that up. Positive cable, tin it, and solder it like so. Yep, all good. Piece of red heat shrink. Again, you can use your heat gun if you've got one handy. I don't have mine handy at the moment, but I will get it out later on when I start putting the heat shrink on the underglow. Should have cleaned the tip off. Oh well. Now at this point, if you've got the wires all cut, the negative wires all cut to join this one, this LED to this LED, you can go ahead and attach it here, but don't attach it to this LED just yet. There's another step you've got to do before you can join these two LEDs together. Now, if you just happen to have cut your wires like I have to link your two LEDs together, you can go ahead now and solder the negative onto your first LED, but don't connect it to the positive terminal on your other LED. You're not ready for that yet. There is another step we've got to go through. But what I'm going to do is I'll finish prepping the LEDs, and then I'll go ahead and I'll walk you through that. All right, so clean this one up. Trim this. Almost forgot to tin it. Now these steps that I'm showing here, remember, you repeat that all the way around the car. A piece of black heat shrink for this one. So down we go, like so. So that's part one done. Now get my other LED. Now with this one, remember, we want the negative connection because we're attaching the negative cable to it. So cut it off. Here's my negative. Strip it. Like so. Piece of black heat shrink. Right. That's that. All that remains now to make one side of the underglow work is to link these two lights together. But to do that, there's another step. Now that we've got our wires ready to go, we haven't joined our LEDs together yet because we've got another step we've got to do. Grab your fiber optic, grab a hold of some I've got here some 4mm clear heat shrink. Put your fiber optic on it, trace it down, and then add, I'd say, 2 or 3 centimeters extra on the end, because you've got to allow for an LED at each end plus a little bend just to protect it a little bit. And you've got wire and everything that's got to go in there. Right, so I've already prepared this piece. Go ahead and you can do the rest for around the car. But this is what we got to do now. Right, now that we've got everything ready to go, we've got our fiber optic, we've got our clear heat shrink, and you've got your lights. Get a hold of the LED that we've pre-wired with positive and negative, and get yourself a piece of heat shrink that's a little bit bigger than your LED. Slide it over the top of your LED. It's going to act as a blocker, so it directs more of the light down through your fiber optics. grab a hold of your fiber optic cable, feed that in until you hit the end of your, until you hit your LED. Now I should get my heat gun out, because I don't know how this fiber optic's going to work, because this is a different brand to what I used the first time. But just lightly heat the fiber optic, the heat shrink, till it holds. Pulled it out. Pulled it. Feed it back in there. Just like that. Like so. Right. It's in there now. Now get your heat shrink and feed this unit, this piece, with the black cable that is attached down through the heat shrink. Alright. Now you have to feed it through further than you think you would, simply because you've got to allow it to pop out the other end so you can continue working. This is the hardest part of this job, of this kit. It's feeding all of this through, because it's going to want to get stuck, it's going to fold up, it's not going to work the way you want it to. But you'll get there with some persistence. So slowly feed it through. Alright, I've got it all the way through now. Alright. Now what we do is, I found a little trick that I was having trouble. For some reason this heat shrink that I'm using doesn't want to fit properly. It doesn't want to do what I want it to do. What I've done is I was having troubles keeping the fiber optic cable in the first lot of heat shrink. So what I've done was I peeled that first piece of heat shrink off and got another small piece of heat shrink that is smaller in diameter, only just, than the fiber optic. Feed that over the end, like so. Cut the excess off, you don't need that much. Otherwise, not only that, it's going to block our LED. Alright, so like so, feed that onto there. Then get our other big piece of heat shrink. We grab our LED from over here. Now, before we heat this up, put this on, we've got to put this piece on here. Yeah, that piece on there. Clean it up. Get a hold of our second LED here. We'll trim the negative. We've got our piece of heat shrink on there. Like so. Get our heat here. Soldering iron. Like so. Grab our heat shrink. Now I could probably use heat shrinks a little bit smaller, but I don't have any currently than what I'm using. So I just make do what I got. I just over melt it a little bit so it sticks down. Now, get my LED. The bigger tube that we need. So the LED inside there, down a little bit so that it works as a blocker. Okay, get our fiber optic, put that over the top. heat it up. Again, like I said, I could be using my heat gun, but I can't be bothered getting it. There we go, like so. Now, slowly feed this here back inside the tube until we get it about centered. This is another hard part, because you don't want to pull on the cables too much in case you break them off. Then you've got to start it all over again. Just a little bit, just a gentle tug, like so. Just so it's about even. You can even, if you wanted to, you pull it out a little bit further so you can just bring that wire out, sort of release the tension on the bend. Not too much pressure on it then. And just make sure that your wire isn't wrapped around the fiber optic. Right? Just like so. Like that. So it's when you put it in the car, you get a nice clean light under the car. You want to hide that wire. Alright, then get the heat source again, and you just shrink the clear over this. Just holds everything tight, stops it all moving around, and that's all that's for. You don't need to heat the whole thing, because otherwise it becomes too rigid. Just like that. Now, like I said last time, I'm lucky enough that I've got an LED tester. So get our wires. There's our positive. Here's our negative. Plug them in. Now, got everything plugged in, ready to go. Now for the test. Oh, hang on, we'll turn the lights off for this. There we go. Green underglow. It is a little bit brighter at the ends and a little bit dull through the middle. I haven't worked out how to fix that little bit just yet, but you know, as a starting point, it works well. And now all I got to do is using some tape. You can use Gorilla Tape or any sort of tape that you use on your RC car to secure it to the car. But when you do, don't cover the whole thing. It's okay to cover the ends where you've got your blockers in place. But when you put it in the car, turn the light back on, unplug this. So when you're putting your LEDs in your car, you want to hide that cable. You move that around so that it's out of the way. You put that at the top so it's hidden. Right? Like so. You bend your wires up. There's your LED, so you just bend that up a little bit. It'll stay in place. You can heat that up again after. Look, you can heat this up. It'll actually stay there. Just don't burn your fingers. Here to tell you it's not a pleasant feeling. See, there you go. It's the end bent over, ready to go. It'll stay there. And when you tape it, it'll stay there even more. Bend the other end after. So, grab your LED. Like so. You just run the cable around like this till you get where you need to be. Center it up a little bit. Like so. And when you're taping it up, don't put tape over the whole thing. Just put tape along the back edge of the tube and tape it to your car that way. It'll hold it in place if you use some good tape. It'll just hold it there. And if you use a metallic tape like what I've got here, this is a foil tape. If you use a foil tape to hold everything in place, it'll also add a reflective element to it, and it'll make the light a little bit brighter as it pushes it down onto the ground under the car, giving you the effect you want, like so. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the other 3 units that I need to make. Then I'll come back and I'll show you how I link them all together. Alright, after a little bit of time, I've got all 4 components of my underglow kit ready to go. I've just got to test fit everything now. Make sure I've got it all laid out the way I need it to be. run all of the cables approximately where they're going to go. You won't get it all right until you're actually laying them out. Now, I'm not worried about having all of this excess wire here this time, because my underglow is going to run off a separate switch, and so yeah, I need to have a little bit of extra there. If I was just going to connect it to my already installed light kit in this car, I would have just junctioned in down here somewhere and gone from there. But because, yeah, I'm going to have a separate switch operated by my radio, I need to have an extra lead here, and I'm going to have an extra plug, you know, like this, attached to the car. So, and attached to this, so like that. Now, obviously, I've got a side underglow here, which has got a junction in. So, somewhere with my texter here, somewhere around there. Junction in that one. Having marked this one with my marker, I'm going to go around the car now and put everything in place, hold everything in place, and just mark where all of the joins need to be made for the cables. I've gone ahead and I've marked my cables. There and there. Same for the back of the truck. And just going to do the same thing I did with my other light kit the other day. Just going to get my hobby knife and just gently score and scrape away the top layer here, or the layer of plastic around the outside of the wires, making sure to try and not break them, obviously, but you know, if it happens, it happens. You know, it's an easy fix. It's just time consuming. If you want to make it easier for yourself, you can sometimes just get in underneath the wires just enough to lift them up, and then once you've got them lifted like so, you know, they're out of the protective casing, out of the shield, and just cut it off. There we go, like so. And then the same on the other side here. Like so. Rid of that piece. Now, in under the wire, bend it like so. Put this piece out of the way. Now, there we go. Bring in your side piece. As you can see, I've already cleaned up the wires like so. You'll also need some heat shrink at this time. So here's a piece I've got. Get this. Ready to go. Get your knife. Put your knife in the strands of wire. Just separate a few of them. Just enough to make a loop. Because you're coming in above, go from above there. Twist your wire to close the loop, like so. Grab the end of your tab, wrap it around, like so. Soldering third hand, bring that in. Soldering iron and solder. Like so. Then just get your heat shrink, slide your heat shrink up, seal it up. You're ready to go, just like that. So we'll do the same thing on this side. Separate some wires like so. Create a loop. Get the end of the other negative wire here. Close the loop. Grab your tab. Fold it back around, wrap it around like so. Soldering third hand. And there you go. Nice solid solder. Perfect. Make sure you've got your piece of heat shrink on your tube, on your wire, so as you can seal it running back towards the back of the car like so. Remember, you don't need to cover the wires up too much, otherwise you end up restricting yourself, if you haven't left enough, that is. You should always make sure you leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room with your wire. But there you go, that's one side and the front done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side and the back of the car. Right. I've gone ahead and soldered all of the elements of the underglow kit together. I'm just getting ready to put the power cable on so I can do a power check. But no doubt you would have noticed here that there's some extra wires through the middle. Well, they've got nothing to do with this underglow kit. They were some extra lights that I was planning on putting on the body that I'm using today. But putting them together, all I've done is use the same processes that I've showed you before, like joining the heat shrink to the fiber optics. I've spliced in like I have in all the other places, and you know, the heat shrink and stuff. So all I've got left to do now is take this pre-wired JTS plug, wire strippers fell down. That's an awfully big piece of heat shrink. Trim a bit of that off, throw that away. That's no good. Red heat shrink on there. Soldering stand. We'll tin this up. There we go, like so. Bring these two cables in. We'll twitch these two together, I reckon. Draw them up a little bit closer together, like that. Twitch them together like so. Oops, bump the camera. Sorry about that, guys. Tin these. There we go, like so. And repeat the process now with the negative cable. Make sure we don't have a huge knot in everything. Yeah, that'll work. You'll tin them. Always remember to tin your wires. Just helps them, everything will work properly. There we go. Stow away like so. Bring the heat shrink down. Alrighty, well, I've just finished putting the light kit in the car. I've taped it in as best I can. I run out of tape, so you know, I've just done what I can with what I had. So I'm not going to show you the underside of the car right now. Maybe in a later video I will. I've got some plans for some future videos kind of like this. But for now, I'm just going to turn the lights off here over the camera and turn the car on and let you see what I've done with the lights out. Alright, so here we go. Lights out. Now, as I said throughout the video, I was putting some extra lights in this vehicle that had nothing to do with the underglow. It was just something that I wanted to experiment with, something that I wanted to do and try. That was kind of inspired by the Fun Haver team in Formula Drift and what they do with the LED lights on their cars. I thought, I want to give it a go. I want to have a shot at what they do. Well, this is what I did. I'll bring the camera over. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.